youth. I think what we are seeing here is remarkable. We have, by counting, about 19 institutions, several new and several partner institutions, young people being represented. We have 10 ministries here, about 7 ministers in this room. Now, it is not every steering committee that many of us call that have this level of ministers who are showing up. So, big congratulations for what you've been able to do. And I think the reason is that it comes from a general vision that His Excellency has been able to drive. We all know the big five is by heart, I know, and one of them is the 500,000 youth employment scheme. If His Excellency has decided that one of his 5 priorities is going to be youth, and we look at the National Development Plan, which will be officially launched in Moyamba on Wednesday, next Wednesday, will address the issue of young people, whether it's understanding their challenges, giving opportunities, without having a full status of youth report, without having a thorough understanding of where we are as young people. So when the Minister of Youth approached me very early to say, look, what we need to do is have a status of youth report, I immediately said, absolutely, 100%, I support you. And he's been able to mobilize and get partners excited about this. And before I speak to the details of why we're here and why this is such a significant moment, I also want to thank him for, he could have taken one of his friends to say, hey, friends or directors, no disrespect to the directors in our ministries, but they would have been biased. If it was the Director of Youth and Research who was going to do this study, he would have taken the youth policy and the youth act and just copied and pasted it, because that's what's in his head. But he didn't do that. He was able to competitively recruit not just a credible local consultant, but a consultant team that includes local and international partners. So I really want to thank you for the thoroughness and relationship. A few things I want to speak to: participation and inclusiveness. This is the first steering committee, but there's been technical committee meetings that have been held. I think to my understanding, about 2 technical meetings have already been held, and they've been able to engage people to be able to develop this inception report that we just saw, and it's on your table for consumption. I'm sure it's a live document, it's not closed yet, so after the conversations today, there are other changes and additions, they will absolutely include that in there. And I agree with the World Bank country manager. We're not rushing, but we also don't have a lot of time. But it's important that we have this be fully participatory and inclusive. We must be able to hear from every young person across this country. We must be able to include and incorporate the views of all the sectors who will be able to give us an understanding of the true status of young people in this country. I don't know for all of you, but I remember that since I was a young boy, I always knew that there are 70% of young people that are unemployed or underemployed in Sierra Leone. That number has never changed. It's not gone to 71%, it's not gone to 69%, it is always 70% of young people that are unemployed or underemployed. Something tells me that from when I was a young boy to now, that number has changed. And we will only be able to know whether that number has changed if we spend the time and resources to actually do the study and do the research. So even if it's the only thing that changes at the end of this report, I'll be very happy to see that we will stop quoting 70% of young people are unemployed or underemployed. And if it is truly still 70%, then we need to do something at the end of the day to change that number. So it's important that we are able to understand that the reason for this is not because we've not been doing things in the sector. As the minister said, there's been millions that's been poured by all partners in the sector. There's a youth policy. I think it's 2022, 2025, the youth policy. The policy. So you started the work now for a while. There's a
policy already.
Yes, that's what I meant. So the youth policy exists. Yes. And I remember that there's the act that exists, and there are all of these. So work has been done, but that work is different from what the status report is. When you look at the Inception report, and I'll reference some things that we did yesterday and recently, it is the first. I find it super critical and innovative because it is ready to self-assess its own impact. The status report will review and assess the impact of the policies and the programs and the architecture of youth, of delivery for our young people. And that self-introspection, that openness to self-critique, to self-understanding for young people is what we need to be able to transform this country and the future of young people. Which is why I'm really happy that we're following the one government policy on this, the one government agenda, as you see, and youth in agriculture, youth in labor, youth in tech, youth in ICT, all of these. It's important that we are approaching it from a single government perspective. What I was referencing about how this openness and transparency in governance is important, and we can't take it for granted, is that I think 3 months ago, we for the first time launched the ministerial performance contract, and we published it. 2 weeks ago, we cascaded that down to the local government level. In the past, people in local government run away from transparency and openness. This time they ran to us, they called us. So we want to thank the Ministry of Local Government, we want to thank everybody who was involved in that process. That all these people in the local governments ran to us to say, we want to be evaluated, our performance, we want to keep track of our performance. That level of accountability has never been seen in this country, and largely in that, I mean, we all compare countries. Even in the United States of America, the level of disassociation between the federal state to the federal government to the states, that level of connection and relationship doesn't exist, where our local councils are tying their performance to what the federal, to what the national government wants to do by choice. And I think as we all learn from each other, as the World Bank said, I do hope that the Ministry of Local Government, the Chief Minister's Office, and everybody can learn this, write it down, and be able to share it with other countries. Yesterday, we again did, as His Excellency called it, an innovation in governance. We brought the judiciary and the legislative together with the executive to come and give a status report to the people for what we've been able to do in the last 12 months. Sitting there, as he mentioned, we're not there to applaud our successes because we're done. It's for us to let citizens understand that yes, you chose us because we made promises to you, and yes, we'll tell you what we say we will do over the next couple of 12 months. We'll give you the metrics and the indicators. And here, we'll come and self-evaluate and tell you. So if you don't agree, give us the feedback that you don't agree. If you think there are areas in which we can improve, give us the feedback. That same innovation in governance is why this status of youth report is among the most important things that will come out of the history of this country. That we can tell our young people who make up the majority of our population, we see you, we hear you, we understand what you think, we note what you say, we recognize the impact that you're having, and we're putting our hands up to say, hold us accountable to ensure that we change that story. So we are not looking for a status of youth report that comes and say the Minister of Youth has done well for the last 6 years. This is a message to the consultants. We're not looking for you to come and, he's an amazing minister, all the youth people love him, and as the young people say, not to say I mean they. And it's true, not to say I mean they. But we know that the purpose of this report is not to come and applaud the Ministry of Youth. We know that they are an excellent, amazing ministry. The purpose of this report is for us to have people now. So we expect that level of quality reports that will emerge out of the inclusive and participatory process. And I know you intended already, do publish this and get people to give you more feedback. I want to speak to cooperation. Cooperation is both technical, sharing information, opening your doors to other people, invite somebody to sit next to you, work on your laptop together. And it's also about, not just from government side, but our partner side. Thank you, resident coordinator, for bringing your entire team of the UN family here. And it shows that you're ready to stand with us, and the cooperation among the partners, which we often see that fragmentation of policies. Every UN entity has its own youth policy, and they all work. Already at the UN level, you have a central UN policy, and Sierra Leone is, as you mentioned, one of the countries who's piloting it, and that's evident here. So when we take notes for His Excellency, when we meet the Secretary General in August, we will tell him in coordinating the UN here in supporting rollout of this youth policy. That cooperation and coordination for the young people in this country. Here is the leadership that Sierra Leone as a country is making. We spoke about inclusive and participatory governance, but leadership as well. We are able to learn from other countries and be one of the first countries to say, we will do this, we will be methodological, we will use mixed methods, we will use, I looked through the methodology and it's absolutely robust. We will go through robust methodologies to be able to take leadership in how we shape the issues and understanding of young people. Now, before I end, I want to say that often it's about, one can have policies, one can have reports, and we always add it's about the implementation. But there's something magical that's happening in Sierra Leone. I think you people always say talk and do. But in this new era, what I see happening is do, talk, do, talk, do, talk. It's not sequential. We don't talk first and then we do. We're doing and talking and bringing everybody along and do more. This government has young people. We have 32-year-old ministers. We have 33-year-old ministers, and it's not tokenism. We don't have one single cute young minister. We're like, oh, look, that one young minister within our government. We have several full ministers, deputy ministers, who are under 35. Even if we have the elastic definition of young people in this country, by the definition of young people, we still have not one, not two, not three young people who are under 35, who are ministers, substantive ministers and deputy ministers. So it's not that we talk and force, then we do one. Here, what His Excellency has done is he's done it and then challenged us to be able to do the rest that comes along. And when I say it's not tokenism, not to say they're minister and they wouldn't sit down at cabinets and all they talk. They are the ones who talk more than everybody else in these meetings. And evidently, as we saw yesterday, and not to everybody is doing amazingly well, but Minister Salima, the things that she's doing to transform innovation in this country, we only imagined 7 years ago. Like, these are things we could only dream of. And I think it's important that we are able to recognize the impacts that we are doing, and that we then see if this report goes and recommends, and I like the quotes that that started this presentation. When this report recommends that it should be young people who are leading this country, nobody ever bets. because we know that that is what we need to transform our country. And when I say leadership, I'm not trying to say only presidency. I'm talking about leadership at all levels. Leadership in our schools. Some of my friends from college in the US, one of them owns a school, young person. And his school is one of the best schools in the United States that he found. Because he raps with his students, the entire school, they rap, then they rap, and ball, then they play. And they wouldn't come on back, they go beat all man in school. What young people have, and it's not an exclusion idea, so I'll end on radical inclusion. We're not saying if you're above 35, I am above 35, I'm an old man. We are on the other side. Our message is not to the under 35-year-olds that they are the only ones who have great ideas, that they are the only ones who can participate. That's not what we're saying. All what we're saying is that we must, as a culture, in the past, people say, if you not speak when you're spoken to. This is what my grandmother used to tell me. We don't live in a world where it's speak when you're spoken to anymore. We live in a world where every young person, every old person, every baby has the potential to reach their fullest, has the ability to reach their fullest potential and drive impact. If an 8-year-old, like my daughter, is learning sign language and wants to ensure that other young people learn sign language,